The acoustic guitar is an amazing instrument. It can be one of the most beautiful sounding instruments in your mix, but on the other hand, it is one of the hardest things in recording to really get right. And while there are tons of ways to record amazing, lush acoustic guitar, there are just as many ways to screw it up, turning your mixing and editing process into a nightmare. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the basic mic techniques to record great sounding acoustics, and then we'll talk about some mistakes that you definitely don't want to make when recording acoustic guitar. And then at the end of this video, I'll show you some recording techniques that you may have never seen that can help take your acoustic recordings to the next level. Before we even talk about mics, I want to start by emphasizing the importance of what I'm going to call getting it right in the room. It's common recording advice to get it right at the source, or record like there's no mixing, but this is probably the most true about acoustic guitar. You're not running it through pedals and amps, you can't layer in samples like you would a drum kit, so that means being meticulous about your in-the-room sound is totally worth it. Selecting the right guitar for the track is important, whether it's a smaller guitar or a jumbo. If you have multiple guitar options, try them out within the context of your song. Sometimes the track calls for a booming, loud guitar, and other times you might want something more intimate and small. While guitar selection is important, an often overlooked factor in acoustic tone is your pick selection. So let's listen to the same piece of music recorded with different thickness picks so you can really hear the difference. As you can see, the thickness of the pick will have an effect on how percussive your guitar sounds. Typically, a lot of players like to play with medium or medium heavy picks, but I found that lots of songs call for the really thin, super light picks. The lighter the pick, the less actual strumming noise you get, which is really helpful in full band songs that have drums and percussion that a more percussive guitar might clash with. Another important aspect of getting it right in the room is reducing excess noise as much as possible. Get a solid chair that won't squeak, make sure you're not wearing a bunch of jewelry or clothing that will make noise when you play, and turn off things like fans that might introduce noise to your environment. Once you're happy with how the guitar sounds in the room, now we can start talking about mic placement. If you're using a single mic, a pretty good place to start is around the 12th fret, somewhere between 4 and 8 inches away from the guitar and angled slightly toward the body. This is a good starting point for a few reasons. For one, you're going to get a good combination of the tone coming from the sound hole as well as the actual strings on the neck. And two, you avoid the actual air that's coming out of the sound hole. When you're listening to someone play an acoustic guitar sitting in front of you, you aren't just hearing the body, you also hear some of the resonance of the strings ringing out over the fretboard. So putting the mic here will get you around 70% of the way there just about every time. In this example, I'm using the Sterling Audio Oceanway mic, but you can use any condenser mic that you want. If you feel your tone is too low end heavy, you can slide the mic closer to the nut. If it's not bassy enough, then move it closer to the body. If you want to get a little more flexibility between the tone of the body and the neck, we can introduce a second mic. There are two techniques that I'll frequently use with two mics. One is adding a pencil condenser towards the neck of the guitar and then moving your large diaphragm condenser over the body, and the other is using two pencil condensers in XY configuration. So let's hear how those sound. I'm curious which of these sounds the best to you, so let me know in the comments which mic technique was your favorite. So now that we have the basic mic positions covered, let's go over a few of the mistakes that you want to avoid when you're recording an acoustic guitar. The first mistake that you really want to avoid making is having headphone bleed in your microphones. If the headphones are too loud, your mic will actually pick up what's coming through them, so when you go to mix your acoustic guitar, you'll have muffled background music and sometimes even the click track recorded as well. To avoid this, listen back to your first take and adjust the headphone volumes accordingly.
Cool. What kind of fraud would I be if I didn't check for click bleed? Yeah.
Oftentimes, this is only a problem in quieter parts of the song or when you're ringing out that last chord. So you can automate the click track to get quieter in the soft parts of the song and then turn it off completely at the end of the song. You also want to make sure that you aren't hitting the guitar with your pick in between strums, lifting your picking hand up and down from the body, and sliding around too much with your fretting hand. You also want to avoid breathing super heavily, tapping your foot, or moving around too much while you play. If you aren't careful, you can end up with super noisy recordings really quickly. Like I said, you're really capturing the entire room, so you want to make sure that you keep everything else quiet so your guitar can shine. One thing you definitely do want to do is check for phase issues when using multiple mics. Sound moves in waves, and when you record the same source with two or more mics, you need to line up the peaks and the valleys of those waves so they don't cancel each other out. You can check your phase by zooming in on the waveform of your signals and making sure that they line up. If you don't, you can either flip the phase using a plugin or move one of the mics until they match up. Phase issues can cause your low end to sound weak or your guitar to basically disappear when it's played through a mono speaker, so it's important to get this right. If you're working with tracks that already have phase issues, you can nudge one of the tracks over until the waveforms line up. It's also super important to check your tuning between every take because your guitar can drift a little flat without you noticing, especially if you're recording acoustic first.
Tune.
Before you go on to the next take, make sure you're sitting in the exact same spot because if you move between takes, your guitar will sound totally different from take to take. The last mistake that we sometimes make is panning our stereo track guitars 100% left and right. Now, if I'm using an XY pattern, then I don't mind doing this, but when I record the neck and the body separately, I oftentimes will pan them more like 70 to 80%. In real life, we don't just hear the neck in our left ear and the body in our right ear, so I like to leave a little bit of both mics in each speaker. Ultimately, this comes down to taste, so you can experiment to see what you prefer on a song-to-song basis. So once you've got the room sounding good, you don't have any click bleed, and everything is in tune and good to go, let's talk about some more experimental mic techniques that you can try out. First up is one that I really love when I want a big acoustic guitar sound, and that's the over-the-shoulder technique. This one is awesome because it focuses on capturing the sound that the guitar player hears when they're actually playing. So our ears are above the guitar when we're the one playing it. So putting a mic over the player's shoulder allows us to capture the tone that we're used to hearing when we play. This is a good technique to use if you're recording a guitarist who really wants to capture the tone that they already love from their own acoustic guitar. Another technique that I like to use is recording acoustic guitar with a ribbon mic. If you're trying to record a guitar that's overly bright, or you're working on an extra dark song and you want the tone to match, using a ribbon mic is a great way to tame some of that super bright harshness. Here's an example of an acoustic recorded on a Cascade Fathead ribbon mic. The last trick you can try is playing your acoustic through an electric guitar amp. I found that this works really well in Britpop or garage rock productions. You can do this in real time, but I'll typically just add an amp simulator plugin after the fact and blend it in with my raw guitar. That way you're not stuck with it if you decide you don't want to use it later. So now that we've got some great guitar tones laid down, this video right here will help you level up your vocal recording.